Welcome to Season 2020, Episode 1. In this week's show, how are the teams really surviving in quarantine? Who really holds the keys to MotoGP 2020? And Lorenzo's Day 5. You're listening to the Pecino Report. Hello and welcome to the Pecino Report. This is the official podcast of PecinoGP.com, hosted by me, Dave Gill. Thank you for downloading the first episode. This is the podcast that proves that there may not be a lot of racing going on at the moment, but there is sure as heck some big MotoGP news out there at the moment. Look, I'll be assisted by my two co-hosts on this, as well as the big boss himself, Mr. Manuel Pecino. But before we get to him, I'd like to take this chance to introduce who you're hopefully going to be hearing a lot more of in the future of this podcast. Look, first person I want to introduce you to, Ms. Andra Easton. How you doing, my dear?
Hey, good, thank you. How you going?
Yeah, look, gonna put some cards on the table. We've actually brought you into this podcast because a few weeks ago I noticed that you had an extremely special talent that was very useful on this podcast. Would you like to tell us about?
I can't remember all the conversations we had now. Which
No.
thing?
No. It's the big one.
Oh, the big one.
What are you bringing to the podcast?
The best part about that and the easiest thing for me is it's absolutely nothing. I know nothing. All I know is there's something about motorbikes and going around. I guess they even go clockwise, maybe. I think that's all I know.
Yep. And two wheels, as you explained to me today.
Yes. And skinny guys.
So in one corner, we're going to have what I'm billing as the master, Mr. Manuel Pecino himself. And in the left-hand corner, we're going to have the apprentice, Miss Andra Easton. So
you're making this sound like a boxing competition, yeah.
So it's the master and the apprentice and the two other guys.
Hi to everybody. Nice to be here with you. And now let's start. Let's see how it works.
We'll get to you in a minute, Manuel. I'm building this up for you. So bottom corner, Mr. Stuart Jemima Elizabeth McGrath. How are you, my friend?
David Henrietta Gill. I'm fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I've seen once on your resume, you once described yourself as a Maserati in a world of Kias. Would you like to explain that a bit more?
Yeah, that sums me up. There's far too many Kias on the road, I think. And I think if you can have one Maserati among them, then may as well be me.
But you're also no stranger to MotoGP, and you're also no stranger to motorcycling journalism.
No, this is true. I've sort of dabbled my hand in watching many GPs, and I've been in and around motorcycles in one form or another for probably the last 20 years or so. Writing a couple of articles for a few magazines here in Australia, running a motorbike shop, and as I say, just getting drunk at way too many races.
That's the reason everyone's dialed into this. Now, I've got Manuel's biography in front of me. Like, strap in, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be here for a while.
So how long does this thing go for?
Exactly right. Manuel's 30 years of reporting on the Motorcycle World Championship. He's been a communications consultant for MotoGP, television commentator for MotoGP, speaks 5 languages. He's been a communications consultant for just about every team that I can list off the top of my head. So Lucky Strike, Telefonica, HRC, Philip Morris. He's been an editor-in-chief of Solo Moto magazine. You're currently writing for MCN. This can only be one person. It's the man himself. It's Mr. Manuel Pecino. Welcome to your own podcast.
Yeah, thank you. But the key of this are the 30 years. You know, in 30 years you have time to do a lot of stuff.
Make a lot of mistakes. And
and switch from one team to another until they discover who I am, you know.
So with that experience, this podcast could actually go for the next 50 years.
Exactly right.
Probably will.
With some good filters, none of us can age.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of alluded to at the start of the podcast, there hasn't been. It's been an extraordinary MotoGP season so far, with only 2 races out of the formal season for Moto3 and Moto2. There doesn't appear to be too much racing out there, but there is definitely some news, and Manuel's going to walk us through what he's seeing coming out of the MotoGP world at the moment. And this is the reason that I wanted to start this, and why I reached out to Manuel, is that the news isn't stopping, even though the racing might be. Manuel, the question I've got for you first up is, how are the teams surviving whilst we're being self-isolated and self-quarantined? We're essentially in lockdown. What are the teams doing to keep themselves sharp, keen, and ready to go?
I would say the first thing they are is worried a lot, and many managers are basically crying at their homes, basically the small teams. We have to divide the stuff between the factory teams and the private teams. This is very clear, The factory, they have financial muscle to survive to this situation, but the other teams, it's a matter that we have to go through, and it's
obviously putting some pressure on the riders themselves, because I'm seeing some extreme social media posts at the moment. One of them that I've shared amongst you guys was of Maverick Vinales himself standing on his balcony asking what we're all going to read. As I was explaining to standing in his bathrobe, I'll put it in the show notes after this.
Did he have a TV guide in his hand?
Exactly right. We had to look to see if the book was up the right way. The big question I've got...
So the book looked completely upside down.
Don't be cruel. Don't be cruel. He's a rider. He is a rider. He doesn't need to read.
No, he just needs to know numbers. He's a rider who just needs to know numbers. He doesn't care about words.
I was saying to Andra today, I just want to be body shamed into what my favorite riders are doing. I don't want them actually trying to connect with me at a cerebral level. So, I want to be looking at a Leish in his gym 23 and a half hours a day, making me feel bad that I don't look and work like him. So
yes, but David,
have one of them turn around and go, well, we can read as well. Yeah, no, we don't need.
No, but this is very important to realize. I know that the fans look at the riders like what they are, their idols. Okay.
Yeah.
But we, or basically I live with them every day, you realize that they are like any other person, but they do just one thing better than us, that is riding motorcycle. So, but this happens with all type of sportsmen, of elite sportsmen. You look at them like, wow, but at the end, they are human beings. Yeah, with their pros and their cons, with their characters, and this is what is important not to forget.
One of the things that I wanted to sort of introduce in the podcast is something that was very famous in Australia a few years ago, pre-Tinder, was a comparison called Hot or Not. And the question I've got for you, Andra, I put that photo of Maverick out there for you. So straight off the bat, we can put him on the leaderboard. Is Maverick hot or is he not?
Was he wearing like a dressing gown?
He was wearing the dressing gown, yeah.
Was he wearing anything under the dressing gown?
It's for your imagination to reveal.
Well, see, considering I've got no preconception of, I don't know if these motorbike riders are big muscly guys or lean, you showed me that other video today. I was surprised at how lean and lean.
Yeah. Group 1 jockey, like horse jockey, just covered in from head to toe in leather, slowly sweating and basting in the sun all day. That's pretty much.
Stop it! You're making me a bit. I didn't even know what to even expect. I would have expected, say, because again, I'm sorry, I'm very uneducated in this, but you think of a motorbike rider maybe like in a bikie gang, some big strong guy, or but it's amazing. Like their strength is obviously incredible and their fitness is incredible. I didn't answer your question though.
Yeah, they have to combine the because the weight in racing is very important, right? And they can't be too tall because the aerodynamics is also important. So the other day talking with
Zell's never won a championship,
for example, and the other day I was talking with Danilo Petrucci about that. He's the tallest guy in the championship. Yeah. And he told me, look, the average weight and the size of MotoGP riders should be around 1.70 meters and 75 kilos. This is more or less. Yes.
Thank you, Manuel, for the
you
first
are
time
there
ever.
in the height. The weight, maybe you have to do something for it.
Maybe the weight, I don't quite get that. But thank you, Manuel, for showing me that for once, for the first time ever, I'm too tall for something.
Oh, congratulations. So how tall's the tallest guy?
The tallest guy must be around 1.80 or 80, between 80 and 90. So they don't suit it to the bike.
Is that like kind of, and again, we're going to make the comparison to jockeys. Is that because they get so compact and close to the bike type thing?
Oh, but the jockeys, they are 1.60 meters, 1.55.
Oh, yeah, they're way like a whole other scale.
They are really Pokemons, They are really Pokemons.
When you get someone like Pedrosa, it's like, okay, yeah, so he is a jockey. That's fine.
he was a jockey.
Yeah.
But then how heavy are these bikes? Like how much?
The bikes, I think they are now around 190 or 170 around. Yeah, they are quite light, They are quite light. But
so
not in comparison to the riders, like.
Oh yeah, but they are racing bikes. They are all, super thin fairing. Everything is very, very worked out.
So, Manuel, we did see some racing on the weekend as a part of the eSport challenge. Are you hearing anything on the grapevine of how seriously the riders are taking that, or are they just taking it as a bit of tongue-in-cheek?
Did you see their faces? Come
on,
they're taking it seriously.
I was preparing this podcast and I was ashamed because I didn't watch that. I didn't like. I like real racing, but I got some inputs of good friends of mine and people who understand that was very interesting, and I wanted to share with you to see if you share what they saw. All right?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So let's start with Marc Marquez. I was told that Marc was clearly the man who controlled everything, the one who was making jokes. It was like the leader of this story. Clearly the alpha macho. I don't know how you say it in English, right?
And with the share screen, that's why they had him up in the top left as well. He was clearly number one, sitting there like the robot in charge. Yep.
And he was the one who was making jokes. That's what I thought. Then another thing interesting, on the opposite was his brother. Very serious, completely concentrated, I was told. And by doing this, he knew later both Alex and Bagnaia are the most questioned rider in MotoGP at this moment. So for them, it was not fun. For them, it was like, wow, I have to show something. To reivindicate themselves, right?
Yeah, mark their ground.
This is what I was told. And then I was told that Fabio Quartararo knocked down Vinales.
Oh, twice. Didn't he ever? Twice. Yeah, he went down twice.
And that people who know Maverick said that his face was okay, but he was on fire on that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to comment with you about that is something very interesting as well. Marc was very funny, like joking, but in the introduction, he said that he was not good in that.
Yeah.
Right? That his brother was good. And then when it started, he got very serious and he raced very conscious, not making any mistake. He didn't crash. And he arrived, I think, fourth or something like this or whatever. But he approached it not like a game, like professional. You see, This is what I got told.
Wow. So you think they are? There's agendas at play already, even at the Xbox and PC level.
When they get together, as we have spoken so many times, they are racing each other since they are 13, basically. Yeah. So they know, for them, anything. If they go to eat, probably they challenge who eat less, not who eat more.
Look at them with the keepy uppy challenge, kicking the toilet rolls up over the last few months as well, Dave. It's perfect to see.
These guys, you remember, look, we have photos of these guys when they were 9, 10 years old racing together. Yep. So they have done nothing in their life but competing. So for them, anything they do is competition.
Yep.
Yeah. So good point. Good point. So the reason that the eSport Challenge is obviously, the avenue and the outlet for MotoGP is because you're living through quite a remarkable set of circumstances. The question I've got for you, Manuel, is that you've had some observations recently of who is going to hold the key of when MotoGP 2020 season effectively going to kick off.
Oh, yes. Look, the situation is actually we don't know when the championship is going to start, right? Today, it has been officially cancelled, the French Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. Now, the following Grand Prix is to be the Catalonia Grand Prix. Mugello is the next on the list. That probably won't happen. Okay. So we don't know when it will start. Nobody knows. I think nobody knows in the world what's going to happen in 1 month. The story is, and the point is, when it starts, as everything has been rescheduled, there is a factor that nobody has thought about it. Well, I haven't read or heard anything about it. It's about the tires, okay? Because you have to consider one thing. The tires is the most important thing in a race, The tires is the little piece that puts the bike in contact with the floor, okay? With the ground, not the floor, the ground. So, and it's so dramatically, normally these tires are very technically chosen. It depends on the temperature of the air, the temperature of the ground, and this before the season starts, the tire supplier knows exactly which tire he will take to which place. So, and this has completely changed. So what's going to happen? Look, an example, when the Argentinian Grand Prix was scheduled to be in April. April in your hemisphere is what? Is
starting to come into winter. We're in autumn or fall is the
fall. Now it's the race is scheduled for November, so it's completely the other way now. It would be cold down there in April. Now it's super hot. And
it's going to be very hot, yeah.
Yeah, and as they don't have any experience, how are they going to do? Okay. So I contacted this week the Michelin guy in France and talking with him, yes, about this story, how they are going to do. But the key of the story was very funny. He told me the headline. He told me, look, the championship can decide to start whenever they want. But as long as we cannot get in our factory to produce the tires, there is no racing. And because the government has locked down?
Yeah.
Locked down all the industries. Nobody's working. Nobody's producing.
And this was the moment that it all clicked for me when we spoke about this. So unless Macron releases his workforce, there is no
the headline. You know that journalists, we like to do headlines. The headline is Macron has kidnapped the championship. We are in the hands of the president of France.
The question, I was thinking about this the last couple of days. Would there be an opportunity? We live in extraordinary times. What has brought us to this point is unprecedented in the last 70 years. So would there be a precedent for Dorna and FIM and whoever make these decisions to go to Dunlop and Bridgestone and say for the remainder of the season?
Oh, no. There is no way. Look, the most important thing in motorcycle racing is safety. Yep. The most. In a car, you are seated in a box and you are safe, basically, in a car.
Unless David's driving.
Unless David is driving. And depending of the hour of the day or of the night. In fact, I asked the guy from Michelin if they could transfer their technician who built, because the racing tires are made manual, not with machines. They are manual. The guys are putting all these different. That's why sometimes it doesn't come out round. So I asked them if they can transfer those hyper specialized technicians to Brazil or to Indonesia, where they have huge factory. They said no, because the racing department has certain tools that are just for that,
So Macron really does have MotoGP by the crutch of the pants.
It's a very elegant way to say it, yes.
I was going to say something else, but I think it would throw our rating on
you are a gentleman. You are a gentleman.
So when you were talking before
okay,
about
Dave, I'll say it.
if they have a race in a really hot environment, so being that it's a season, do they generally only race in certain types of weather? Or is this going to throw that completely out? Or do you think they might try and cram it into the end of the season? Or
They normally race in any type of weather. They try to avoid, for example, to race in super hot summer. Here in Europe, in August, it's impossible to race in Spain or in Italy.
Yeah, you're 30 degrees.
But they are... but they are ready to do it anywhere, in cold, in hot, but they have to know in advance. And another thing I forget to say, the guy from Michelin told me, okay, once they open the factories and we start to work, we can't produce tires like donuts. It will take a time. So if they start doing a lot of races, they won't catch up. They have not the time to catch up and produce everything.
Got a backlog.
Yeah.
There's a long lead time. Wow.
So are all these riders able to get out and practice at all, or they're actually locked up and?
No. This is they are all at home, and it's funny because basically what they do again, they all have a gym at home. Okay. They all play PlayStation day and night.
Like simulator type.
No, just to have fun. I probably.
I'm thinking of preparation training.
Whatever,
They're just boys playing their Xbox, playing their
late,
PlayStation.
Late teens, early mid-20s. That's all they care
Just
about.
on $1 billion.
I bet they're not playing games. I bet you they're looking up other things.
Yeah.
And I tell you something that they have now that they do as the bicycling. Okay, so they with these computers. How do you say this bicycle you do on a roll? No, roll. You say.
Yeah. Yep.
Stationary
I've seen the
bike thing,
photos. Yeah, they can.
Okay, so they all connect together, and they compete. Like, okay, let's compete to go up a mountain pass.
Yes.
They go together and then they start racing because they can. Their life is competing. This is what they do.
They sound like such a family. It's a community. It's a family. Thing.
Andra, a family no, because their relationship is supposed to be friendly.
Not all families are, but
yeah. Well,
okay, I'm not far off.
My family.
I buy this. No, but they look. Again,
so it's not necessarily healthy competition, it's actual competition.
They can't be family because you have to realize they compete each other since they are 9 years old. Yeah. So every weekend they met in the last 10, 15 years. Everyone looked at the other and said, I have to beat this guy. So you cannot be a friend of somebody you have to destroy every weekend.
Yeah,
that brings a good point up. There's always the drunk uncles, and there's always the members of the family who've gone out and done other things, the black sheep, and we've got a bit of a black sheep on our hands at the moment within the MotoGP family with Jorge Lorenzo. He's gone off. He's essentially pulled the pin. He said, "I've had enough. I'm going to take a break from the sport." But this was another conversation we've had.
He said that about 2.5 years ago, didn't he, Dave? When
he exactly.
only decided to get a 3/4 throttle down the main straight.
He gave a very famous speech explaining his 4 most important days in his life. But once again, your mind, Manuel, I don't think has ever stopped from that moment. And you believe that there's a potential 5th day in Jorge's life.
Oh,
well,
yes,
before we do that, hang on. Can we just take a step back for all the listeners? Manuel, would you like to start from the first day and run us through what those first 4 days actually are in a rider's life?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Jorge, I have to say that Jorge Lorenzo, I know him very well because I have traveled with him around the world for years, and we traveled together. He, his manager, and myself. So I know him very well. And Jorge is a very, very special character. He's a guy very special. He is a 5-time world champion, so he's not anybody. Okay. So when he decides to retire, he announces it in Valencia last November, right? Yes. So at the press conference, he said basically there are the 4 important days in the life of a rider. One is when he arrives at the World Championship. The second one is when he wins his first race. The third, when he conquers his first world title. And then he says, and the fourth is today, when a rider announces his retirement. So how many? 60 days later, he announced that he was returning as a test rider for Yamaha. And then another 30 days later, he announced that he was racing again. So exactly then I realized that with Jorge, there is a 5th day, the day of the returning.
He moved the rock aside. He returns back from out.
Took him a bit more than 3 days, but hey, I'll give him that.
Yeah, but I tell you something. I was really worried because Jorge is a guy that has no friends, has nobody. He's such a lonely guy because of many reasons.
Just because of his focus, though, realistically? That's just because he's had 100% focus to what he's doing for the last decade and a half? Or even longer?
Yeah, no, because I don't think so. Because, look, there are other riders who were as much as focused like Casey, for example, Casey Stoner. Yeah. You are super Casey Stoner. And they had girlfriends and others like Cal Crutchlow has family with children. Lorenzo has no girlfriend, has no family. He has himself. Sorry. And everybody who is around him is basically with him because of the money. Lorenzo has a famous sentence that explains exactly his character. He says, I want to be surrounded by, in Spanish we say, Lorencistas. I mean, people who are from Lorenzo. So he did not never admit somebody who was capable to criticize him. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, but even so, he won 5 world championships. But on his environment, there were nobody who said to him, Jorge, you are wrong. Jorge, don't do this. Never, ever. Mm-hmm. So my fear was when he announced his retirement, that after 3 months, he would jump out of a window, you know, because he's so giddy. The money for him is like, basically he lives for the money. So he is a strange character. So his comeback at the end is probably a good news for him.
So he didn't retire. Is that the moral of his story? Did he do a John Farnham and retired a few times and came back?
Yes, he retired basically because he didn't know how to get out of that, you know, because he was racing with a team and with a bike. He just didn't do it. So he went back.
Manuel, before we go any further, can we dig into that a little bit for Andra? Just talk about the struggles that he had there for that last couple of years and what you saw going through his head and what he'd spoken about.
Yeah, Jorge, basically he has raced with one brand and he has been very successful with Yamaha, right? And then 2 years ago, he was hired by a huge money. He got paid around 12 million a year. 12 million euros or 12 million, yes, 12 million euros a year. In Ducati,
that's about $1 billion Australian, Andra.
Well, it's about what we earn, right, in our jobs?
Yeah, it's about the same. Yeah, it's
there are months that we don't make that money, you know.
Crazy money.
It's crazy money. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the case is that he was in that factory for 2 years. He won races. He had some problems. Then he had to leave that factory and went into Honda. And Honda is where Marc Marquez races. He turned into the teammate of Marc Marquez. That was the big mistake. Because if you go into a team where the other rider is already winning, he's the one who controls the environment.
Yeah. You can only have one number one rider in a team. There's very few teams these days, and even in history, have said our riders, or even with F1, our drivers are equal. There's always a number one. And obviously, Andra, you've heard how Marquez is. He's been number one for a long time. But I think you'll agree, Manuel, that Jorge would never see himself as a number two. That was never going to be a good fit.
He is the number two. Look,
exactly.
Andrea, you know Valentino Rossi, right? I've heard about him.
That's one name I've heard of.
Yeah.
And I think did you say one before? Was there an Aussie guy?
Oh yes,
Casey Stoner.
Casey.
Yeah.
There you go. That's two. Okay, I lied. It's not completely nothing. I've heard of them.
Okay.
Awesome.
Rossi was for decades the super top rider in motorcycle racing. Then a young kid who was a little bit more than 20 arrived one year in Rossi's garage. Mm-hmm. And this guy was Jorge Lorenzo.
So was he quite old to get into this, or?
No, very young.
He was young. He was the new kid on the block.
Yeah, and Valentino was the top of the sport. He was like God in this story.
Knocked him off.
What happened at the end, this young kid with consistency and self-confidence, because you have to be mentally very strong.
You'd have to be.
He pushed this guy out of the garage. Valentino Rossi had to leave his kingdom after 3 or 4 years because that young kid ate him,
It got to the point in the pit box that they had to put a wall up between them because they couldn't be in sight of each other.
Valentino, this is a metaphor. I can explain you so many things about Valentino. So many.
Next episode, we can have an entire episode on this.
I saw Valentino arriving when he was 16. He is now 41, and I have seen him coming through and how he is. I know his character. I have been with him having dinner many times, so I know him so well. And Valentino, it was almost impossible to think that a young kid could, beat a guy who was God. But at the end, it was just because he believes so in himself. Lorenzo has 3 virtues. 1, self-confidence. Second, that even in the worst moment, he never doubts about him. He can be in the deepest hole, but he believes that he's capable to get out of that. And this
sounds like, is this a guy that he's going to have to just ride until he can absolutely not ride anymore? It sounds like he's never going to be able to step away from it. I did a quick Google as you were talking and looked up, and it showed he had a few accidents and he was concerned about his spine or something, or...
Yeah. The last year he had a few accidents because, look, when you are young, you don't care. The ground isn't hard. Yeah. As you get older, it gets harder and harder. It's a strange physical theory.
Or just realizing consequences or what could really happen.
And what happened is what? When you win 5 world titles, you have nothing to prove.
How do you go backwards? How do you go back? Like, how do you...
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Which is the question.
There's no going back.
Yeah. How do you become a test rider? How do you take a step back? These are the questions that...
I think because he has nothing better to do and he likes the money.
So he'll just keep doing it until he absolutely just can't.
Look, I know him as well, very well. And Lorenzo was obsession that he wanted to quit when he had 100 million in the bank. That was his goal. He said, Manuel, the important thing is the money. Don't forget the money. And the money for him was 100 million. As a test rider, he is making 4 million. That is not
So what do you
bad.
mean a test? What's a test rider? What do you mean?
A rider that the factory use now and then to improve the bikes.
So he's still racing?
No, testing is something different than racing. Racing, you do it surrounded by a lot of riders. Testing, you go with a small team on an empty track, and it's just
around and around and around by yourself. Yeah, change the settings on the bike.
So he wins no matter what. They might have a different
component to the bike. Yeah, exactly, yeah. He's always number one.
Yeah.
That's a good plan.
Yeah, but for a champion, it's very difficult. because again, they are used to compete. For him to go to do this will be so boring, because imagine somebody used to race, he gets on a track 10 o'clock in the morning. He gets out on an empty track with this echo, the bike, around the track. And then as a test rider, you go in, you go out because you are testing. You are improving what you got. So they are putting in on your bike pieces that may work or may not work. You understand? Because if you want to improve something, you have to change things.
Yeah. So he gives advice on how to tweak it and do this
and
that.
So you go out.
He'll just give feedback. He's perfect because he can give feedback realistically. He's ridden these bikes for years and years, so he can tell if he's riding a 1:34 and he's got these components and then they put a different component and he can feel he's a bit slower into one certain corner and he's doing a 1:34.5. He can say that.
Look, you have to put in this situation. He goes out, and if you test something, you do 10 laps. And then you come back. And then
not 100.
You do 10 laps, you get into the garage, and the team needs 1 hour, 40 minutes to change everything. Then you go out again. You do 5 laps. You come back. So it's not competing like, okay, let's do everything in 45 minutes. So to be a test ride is so boring. It's incredibly boring.
You know what, Manuel? Give me his number. I'll take that bullet for him.
They are the only people who I think that would think that way. So the rest of us.
And look, I have to tell you another important thing being a test rider. You have to be at the same level at 10 in the morning that at 5 a.m. in the afternoon. Because you have to have the same, feedback. Because all of us in the morning, we are more...
You've got to be a fixed quantity. You have to be. They have to remove all the variables, and so you have to ride at a fixed capacity at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m.
Yes, because you are a test rider.
I'm just going to hold you there. I'm actually going to tell you it's not that difficult to do that. I am the same person when I get up. I'm the same at lunchtime. I'm the same in late afternoon. I'm the same in the evening.
But where he's running a 1:34, you'll run a 2-minute
It's a matter of level, or starting level.
I'll let you in on a bit of a secret. I'll tell you how I do it. Not many people know this. The secret to it is, I'm willing to share this with some of the top flight riders, is set a very, very low standard. Extremely low standard.
And just cruise on through.
I can maintain that through the entire day.
Nobody will complain. Nobody will complain.
That's it. And if you do that forever, no one ever expects anything more of you. And you can do this for months.
And always fall just short.
That's it. Manuel, thank you so much for your insight and your thoughts. We're hoping to make this a regular occurrence. Where can our listeners and our viewers get some more insight? Where would be the best place for them to read more and see more of Manuel Pecino?
Well, it's not nice that I say you, but the Bible of this motorsport, you can read, because people, it's okay to hear and to see videos, but please read a little bit like Vinales does, okay? Get a little bit of culture. Get a little bit of culture. It's not just watching videos. So sorry for that joke, but you can read me and find out different things that you won't see anywhere else at pecinogp.com. It's I don't want to call it website. I prefer to call it a platform, okay? So there's an English version, and if you want to learn Spanish, there is the same in Spanish as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Andra, where can obviously the hordes of fans and spectators that we're going to have...
I didn't want you to ask me this question.
Where can they get hold of you?
We'll save that for later.
All right, then, Stu, where can...
I'm all over social media like a dirty rash that won't go away. Realistically, these days, I've got nothing else to do in this time of lockdown. So, you can jump on your IG feed and you can find me at QuickDraw73 on the gram.
Not a problem.
You're wearing pants in all your photos, right?
Oh, most of them. Just don't zoom in on any mirrors that may be behind some of the shots. It's not pretty.
and as of today, we have our own Instagram page. So the Pecino Report has our own page. So we'll be communicating with everyone out there from this day forth.
Are we getting a theme tune?
The theme tune. We're getting the theme tune. Yeah, we're able to pull that off. So
We made it when we theme tune.
the listeners will be able to hear that. We're even going to have an outro as well. So Manuel, once again, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next episode.
Oh yes, I hope we have fun on each episode like we had today. This is the spirit I think we have to put in here, right?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you've
Thank
actually
you
got
so
me
much,
excited.
man.
I'm going to go Google some of these guys now, and I just looked up one before, and he had a pretty good mustache. So you've got me. I'm in.
What is this, 1982? Come on.
I was actually impressed because normally it's not something I'd look at, but there was pictures of him with one and one without, and I went, yeah, damn.
Yeah, hot.
That's a one.
Who did you
Whoa.
Google? Who did you Google?
Who did you Google just before we go?
Andra, who did you Google?
It was one of the ones it was Maverick, I think.
Maverick Vinales?
Yeah. He sometimes he
has the little D'Artagnan
Yeah.
thing going.
The Max Biaggi tribute.
Yeah, it's a Max Biaggi tribute.
Yeah,
I say like it's an ant demonstration, you know?
Yeah, that's
It's
it.
an demonstration.
It's a bit of Antonio Banderas on a motorbike.
It's pencil thin, no?
All right, guys.
Sure, it's very
Okay,
nice.
guys, thank you very much. Andra, nice to meet you. Stu, once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you
David.
so much, Manuel. It's
Bye-bye.
fantastic. I love
Take
listening
care.
to you for hours. Guys, bye. Take it easy. Bye.
Be safe.
Yeah.
What the hell's that?
It's an oni, which is a Japanese demon. He's holding a club up over here, and he's clubbing a fish that's turning into a dragon going up my arm.
Wow, that was
Of course.
one trip of LSD that you never told me about.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a night when you did that.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, I just woke up the next morning, where the hell was I last night? Apparently I was going up a mountain and turning into a dragon.